there, welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Yeah, let's go. I'm super excited about my next guest because this is a guy that, there's no way he remembers meeting me. Frank Caliendo. Like 20 years ago, I was on a different radio show here, the Pugs and Kelly Show, and he came in and we knew him because he was doing the Madden stuff already, and he had already been on Mad TV, and we had seen his stand-up. And one of the first things he said, Frank Caliendo, yeah, you spell it C-alien-do. And I have always spelled your name right since then, because I don't know why I found that so funny. You've probably told that same joke, if it even counts as a joke, like 1,000 times. But Frank Caliendo, C-alien-do. Welcome to the James Show.
You know what? I do remember you, Pugs. If you're Pugs.
No, I'm James. I was the sidekick for those guys. I was the man on the street guy that go out with the microphone and say embarrassing things.
I don't remember you at all.
No. Well, the second time I met you, I was on a different show in New Orleans, and you were on our show on Radio Row, but you were on like 18 shows in a row that day, so there's no way you remember me there. You probably remember me if you saw me there. But you're a guy who just can't stop. And the first thing I want to ask you, Frank Caliendo, is what have you enjoyed most? Doing stand-up, doing Mad TV, doing the football stops for the Fox NFL Sunday? I mean, these are vastly different jobs, but which one do you think is more fun?
I would say the stand-up is, because there's a different set of rules at the NFL and Fox. And Mad TV too, and you never knew what the final product was going to be at either one of them. Things could get cut at a bunch of different levels. So stand-up, I'm basically doing what I want to do the way I want to do it, and I'm my own self-editor at that point, and I think I do a pretty good job of that. So I do a very clean show and that type of stuff too. So I do try not to be a gunslinger with the words and that type of stuff. So I think I do a pretty good job of that. And, that's why I think I enjoy it the most, doing stand up, because it's my own thing.
Well, I definitely see you as a comedian, a stand-up comedian who happens to do impressions and other acting gigs. But I think for a lot of America, they saw you doing their impressions first, and they're not familiar with you as a stand-up.
Well, I weave the impressions in a lot of like most of the stand-up, actually. So it's like, it's not doing, scenarios like an old school Rich Little kind of thing where I come on stage in character wearing a costume or something like that even. It's more of making an observation. So example, Al Pacino. When you talk about acting and how I've learned to act is you're curious. Well, Pacino is always curious to the point where he doesn't understand simple things. Like somebody could flip a light switch. He goes, "Wait a second! You flip a switch over there, and a light comes on over here. Whoa, that's sorcery!" And the fact that he yells for no reason. So then you do a type of fish out of water casting, cast him as a librarian just to see what he'd do. Everybody like, where's the B section? So that type of stuff, the juxtaposition, but for a reason, I like that type of stuff as opposed to just the what if Al Pacino was working at McDonald's. I think it would go something like this. So it's a little bit more thought to it, and that's how I've always approached it.
Yeah, see, I can't do the full Al Pacino. I can do Al Pacino being Scarface, which I think a lot of people can do. But the trick for anyone doing voices, and I've done voices in radio over the years, but it's all in the tongue placement. And I think you've even explained that in some of your videos, how when you move your tongue like up into the back and then move it to the front, you can turn from like Kermit the Frog into John C. Reilly or something to that effect.
Yeah, there can be some tongue placement. It's also tightening of the throat. So Kermit the Frog is up here. Hey, old Kermit the Frog here with more of a nasal thing. And if you bring in the back of the throat, you can tighten it up. And it's that Fozzie Bear, waka, waka, waka. So if you use those two types of things, if you go from Kermit the Frog and bring it down here, it becomes John C. Reilly. Did you
there it is.
My drum set? And then you add some air, becomes Mark Ruffalo. I see this as an absolute win. Add a little more depth to it, and it becomes Paul Giamatti. I believe this is one of the craziest things I've ever heard. Now, you tighten it up again a little bit, and it can become Seth Rogen. Oh, I had no idea I was even doing this. And then add the laugh, which is basically just Bert from Bert and Ernie slowed down. Bert's like, and then, so they're similar.
Right. I think like if you do Kermit the Frog with the country accent, you accidentally sound like Luke Bryan. There's a whole bunch of those. I don't want to try and do voices next to Frank Caliendo because I'll stink and embarrass myself. You're at the Addison Improv tonight. Now, I was wondering if you were going to come on the show because I assumed you were sold out. But here's what they did. They jacked up the prices, and you were all sold out except for one table. There's one table of 4 where you have...
I made them change that. I saw that there was a table of 8, and you had to buy all 8. I'm like, wait.
Someone bought that.
Nice. You got to split. No, I made them split it up. So
okay.
They got rid of that. I was like, let the people buy the individual tickets. I was like, that's kind of crazy. That's not as crazy as I'm going to be in another city later next week, and they were charging a suite for like $800 for like 10 people or something, like 8 people. You could have 8 to 10 people. I was like, I called my agent. I'm like, did we agree to this? What's an $800 set of tickets? That's crazy. So I had them move that too. But
hey, Frank, you might just want to accept that you're a really popular guy and you can command such high amounts because you have such a big and affluent audience.
They were still available. I don't think I was that popular.
Oh, okay.
But I am. I know your signal travels pretty far. There's, I think, 4 tickets left for tonight if they're not gone already.
I'm looking at it right now. There's 4. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's. Other than that, I'm in Houston the rest of the weekend, Saturday and Sunday at the Houston Improv, which is owned by the same people, so I can do this. ImprovTX.com for either Dallas which is Addison, or the Houston Improv all this weekend, and even. I will be back kind of in the area, but it's 3 hours away from Dallas proper. I'm going to be in Lawton, Oklahoma at Apache Casino May 22nd as well. If you want to look at tickets for that, frankonstage.com. Even easier than C Alien Do for my last name. It's frankonstage.com. You can get all the tickets for Addison, Houston, or even Apache Casino out there in Oklahoma.
Real quick, Frank, you've managed to stay politically neutral while so many other comedians have just had to open their mouth and let the world know. Is that something you do on purpose? How important is that to you that you're not a political figure?
Well, I don't want to be. First of all, I always assume that I have the assumption that I might not be correct on an issue. So that's why I kind of walk the middle of it all the time. I don't seem to be... I always like to see how things play out, and I don't like to jump to conclusions on anything. So, even with like the stock market today and that type of stuff, I look at that and go, okay, this looks really, really bad. Let it play out a little bit, and then I can get mad in 6 months from now if it's still that bad. So I look at stuff like that and see, but sometimes I think, change isn't always easy either way, whether it's to the left or right. And I like to watch it kind of, find its way. And I believe we can, if people work together, which sometimes means fighting it out and sometimes means just compromise. But that's how I am. I've always been that way, and I've never dug my heels into anything. But I like to see how in this world we live in, it seems to be that everybody jumps to a conclusion immediately on every single thing in the world. I'm like, well, you're going to change your mind 100 times in the next 100 days then. So we'll see. And I never wanted to be somebody who told you how to think. I'd rather listen to what you have to say, maybe have a friendly disagreement, and then let it play out. And we'll see. I'm wrong a lot. So I tend to think I'm going to be wrong. So I hope not, but it happens a lot of times. So that's why I kind of do it that way. Well, and I just thought, people hate being told what to think, I think.
Well, it's hard to be mad at a guy who takes a neutral stance like that. But you've seen so many guys, whether it's like a Bill Burr or a Ricky Gervais or a Russell Brand or even like a Jim Gaffigan, get swept up into politics. And I feel like you lose half your audience when you do that. So go see Frank Caliendo if you want to be one of the last 4 people to get a ticket. He's going to be at the Improv tonight at 7:30. Thank you very much, Frank.
Hey, appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
All right, that's fantastic. The guest of the day. I'm going to pull out this clip and I'll put it up online. I'll try and get it on YouTube and Facebook and the X account for WBAP tonight. How cool is that? The guy who does John Madden better than John Madden these days. Get it? Because John Madden's, passed away. See, this is why I'm not a comedian, so I'm a talk show host. And sometimes when we have these very important, almost heady headlines like what you're seeing with Liberation Day and the tariff situation, it's good to go back and learn some of the lessons from our most important professors from your childhood, some of your mentors, your teachers, your gurus. Among them, Ben Stein in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the the Great Depression, passed the the tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised or raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
All right. How's that a setup for my next guest? Scott Bushke's back on the James Show. Welcome, sir. Your response to Ben Stein's tariff review from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Thank you. Love the clip. That was good.
So if you're using tariffs as a mean to stimulate the economy or stave off a Great Depression, we have seen that that's not necessarily going to help very much. But can it help us get fairer trade deals with some of our other countries?
Yeah, I think that's the big question, right? There's a lot of chaos going on right now, but I think, looking at this as a long-term play of how can we get better trade deals, better negotiation, use this as a negotiation point to get something else that'll help Americans. And really, I think one of the biggest pushes that we see from my lens is that the small and medium sized businesses, the manufacturing companies of America, some of that bedrock of our economy. They're going to have a more level playing field with this. And I don't think anybody thought it was going to go as far as it has. And there's obviously, you can see all the confusion and concern in the markets today. But it should really help the small manufacturer that, in all the small little towns and large cities as well, have a little bit better playing field and be a little bit more cost effective and competitive in the marketplace today.
Well, we can expect prices to go up if these things stay in effect. The question is it going to be enough that it could have a negative impact on the rest of the economy?
Correct. Yeah, and that's the big question to see with as far as these push things, what will that do? And only time will tell. I can tell you that in the M&A world right now,
mergers and acquisitions.
Yes, exactly. So the small, medium-sized businesses that are selling or companies looking to buy, there's still more buyers than there are sellers, and the activity is stronger in 25, the first quarter of 25, than it was in 24, fairly significantly. Now, with all of this coming out just this week, we'll see how that, looks a quarter from now. But right now, it's still pretty aggressive marketplace out there.
Well, since you're an M&A guy, you'd be the good person to ask. Remember when everyone was doing corporate inversions about 10 years or so ago to get around some of the goofy international policies that we had? Could this sort of undo that or incentivize people to move their headquarters back here to get on the inside of the tariff wall?
Yeah, I think that's what they're hoping is that more, the trend has been more onshoring than offshoring. Obviously it was offshoring for a long time, and now more people have said, hey, it's better to bring it back, better quality and timing and everything else. So I do think that's one of the goals is not just to try to create revenue, which we've seen how that's gone before, but it's also to try to bring more companies back to the United States for more jobs and really help that manufacturing group continue to drive strong. But it definitely is causing some chaos right now and has people looking at, are they going to eat the cost? Are they going to pass on to the customers? Is it going to be the supplier, the manufacturer, the distributor? If they're in retail, where are these extra costs going to be absorbed and by who?
Well, I'm also thinking how Burger King did the corporate inversion where they joined Tom Hortons and then moved their headquarters to Canada. I'm looking for some of these to get undone because now the incentive could be, well, Tim Hortons would sure like to have their headquarters down here, and then we get to coin a new term. We could have corporate reversions, Scott.
Right. There you go. You've got it. I mean, I think that is part of the goal is to make it financially viable to get companies back in the United States where we can get more revenue from those companies and again, just going back to that more level playing field for some of the companies here in the United States.
All right, Scott Bushke from Fun Chat. You can find him at cornerstone-business.com. So there's a new bill that's floating through Austin right now that would relax the ban on expelling students in pre-K through second grade. Little backstory here. About a decade ago, in 1 year, Texas public schools suspended more than 100,000 students in pre-K through second grade. And so when this was brought to the attention to the bedwetters in Austin, they were like, oh, that's wrong. We can't do that. We've got to leave all the worst kids in class to disrupt everyone else. And so they banned out-of-school suspension for kids pre-K through second grade. Except for, there's an exception to that. The most serious of offenses of all, if you brought a gun to class. Oh, yeah, that's right. Not guns. Guns are scary. Ah, look out. So since we've had this, repeated significant disruptions to the classroom have gone damn near unchecked. Now, when I say, suspended, they weren't completely expelled. We're just talking an out-of-school suspension temporarily up to being expelled. And if you have kids in public schools right now, I've got 4, so I know a little bit about this. One of the biggest problems that you may have observed, it's been my observation, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that we kick way too few kids out of school. That has been my observation. Now, what does that end up looking like when you relax discipline on the worst students possible? Well, you're going to get worse results. The discipline isn't just punitive. It's not for fun. We don't punish kids or give them out of school suspension just to be mean to them. We do it because that's what's better for the other students. We're not even doing it because that's what's best for the student that got in trouble. He may learn his lesson from that, and that would be a good little rehabilitation moment for him. But if he doesn't, at least the other well-behaved kids got a break from this jerk for a while. And I say that because I got out of school suspension quite a few times when I was growing up. I got in school suspension so much that I had my own chair. My senior year, Coach Taylor gave me my own chair. It was a small school. I wasn't really in there all the time. It's just also I had relatives that worked there, so everyone knew me. And it's a town of 600 people, so of course I got my own chair. But you start thinking, what could the side effects of this be? Let's look at a couple of stories that we've had to deal with over the last couple of weeks, just the last week. I'm not saying there's a connection to that horrible story that happened in Frisco just yesterday, but if that guy had received more serious punishment, would it have reformed him? I don't know. That's really hard to say. But could it have been a cumulative effect if we were a little harsher on these people? A guy that bad, I have to imagine this isn't the first time he's had some negative behavioral act-outs. Would this guy have been suspended or kicked out of the public school program? Would he have even been allowed to the track meet in the first place? We'll never know. The kid last week that was beating the snot out of the other kid at the Bedford Junior High and stomped his head until he was unconscious. Were we better off that kid was in school, that he didn't get out of school suspension growing up, that we relaxed the punishment for bad kids? Because you see the obvious parallel when we defunded the police and we relaxed the prosecutions on, say, shoplifting in California. And when we tried to be deferential and thoughtful and empathetic to the criminals around us, did crime get better or worse? Well, same thing's going to happen in school. The real problem here, though, isn't that these people are going to be fixed by harsher punishments. They're going to be removed by harsher punishments. What we're doing here is treating the symptom and not the disease. And I believe the real disease, people like to point at the racial angle. In both the Bedford beating last week and the Frisco stabbing this week, and you go in the comment section, and it breaks your heart to see that people bring up race, because the problem isn't race. There's nothing inherently good or bad about people based on the color of their skin, period, point blank, end of story. Some people might try and put a cultural angle on it, but let's be more specific. The problem we're having with the behavioral issues in schools, especially public schools, can almost exclusively be boiled down to the absence of the father in the household. The poor job we've done in family formation across all races and socioeconomic classes. The data is absolutely crystal clear. The number one predictor of a kid ending up in prison in adulthood is whether or not he has a father in the home. Not the color of his skin, not whether or not his parents are rich or poor, or what socioeconomic background he came from, or whether or not he finished college. It's whether or not he had a dad in the house. He was born in wedlock and raised with his biological parents. 30 times more likely to end up in prison. What do you think about that? 9 times more likely to drop out of high school. There's all kinds of statistics to this. The number one predictor of whether or not a kid will be abused, whether it's sexually abused, physically abused, verbally abused, harassed, whatever, tormented. The number one predictor of that is whether or not they're exposed to a step parent at some point in their childhood, male or female. So let's not get caught up in some weird cultural battle. Let's not try and make this a race thing. Let's not try and make this a victim thing. Let's not try and make this a socioeconomic thing. Well, these poor people, they just don't have all the same opportunity stuff. No, there's nothing you can do to replace the dad in the home. There's nothing that's been tried thus far, whatever program it is, whatever food stamps it is, or free lunch program it is, or housing allowance, or the public transportation. These are all jobs that are supposed to be handled first and foremost by your dad. And the government has proven to be an inadequate substitute. And until we address that, then we're just putting Band-Aids on wounds. Whether or not we suspend them forever or expel them from the public school system or not, you're still dealing with the fallout that came from the dissolution of the nuclear family. And so what's the solution? Can we start advocating that? Can we start saying more positive things? Can we have the Chapel Roans of the world say positive things about having kids? Can we just have one of the songs on a hip-hop station say something good about having kids and getting married? Is there a rap song about a dad? And I don't mean stunting like my daddy, because Birdman is not Lil Wayne's dad. But you turn on country music, and you have tons of them. You have All American Girl. You have There Goes My Life. Let me tell you the secret about a father's love. Even today, like in modern country music, they talk about falling in love, getting married, having kids, raising your baby. Is there one of those songs? Go turn it to a rap station right now. Listen for 24 hours. See if there's one positive song about fatherhood in their music. Rock music? Looking at you too. Again, this is not a race thing. This is not a socioeconomic thing. This is a cultural thing. And it's not race specific. It's dad specific. And until we learn that lesson, we're going to continue to have a bunch of poor acting kids in public schools. And we're just going to have to figure out a way to deal with it or kick them out. Well, the stock market didn't seem to like the tariff situation today, but the people that are sympathetic to tariffs are saying, listen, this is just going to be a little speed bump, totally expected, and this will all work itself out pretty soon. Now, if not, it's hard to argue that this won't grind some economic activity to a halt, but I imagine the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle. This isn't going to be immediately resolved, and this isn't going to go on forever, but how long is the pain going to last, and how deep will it hurt? Let's ask my next guest, Victoria Churchill. How about these impossible questions? You know, look in your crystal ball and predict the future for me, Victoria. No big deal. Are you with me?
Well, so great to be back on with you today. You know, I think there's a couple different things that we have to consider here. You know, personally, I am not the biggest fan of tariffs. I'm more of a free market thinker myself, but you know, it will be interesting to see what happens. I think part of the president's plan with this is that he wants to bring a lot more manufacturing stateside. And I think we're even seeing that already with a couple of companies announcing that they want to bring back their production stateside. Now, obviously, with tariffs, there's, of course, tariffs not only on the finished product, but also on raw materials. So that could also impact, you know, costs here in the U.S. So I think there's definitely a lot of factors that we have to consider here.
Well, I also like the people accept that there's going to be a little bit of a lag time. Some people are just concerned about how long it will be. I'm not that concerned with how long it will be. Like, how long will it take for us to make the new factories here? Well, it's not an excuse to not do it. It's a good question, and I don't know what the answer is to that, but I don't think that's a legit criticism.
Yeah, and, you know, like I said, I think there's definitely some organizations that have already announced intent. I believe, you know, auto manufacturers and other people like that are rushing or not necessarily rushing, but they've kind of announced plans to bring things back stateside, maybe from countries like Mexico, because they don't want to face those import tariffs on goods now. And then, of course, you know, we also have things like steel and lumber that would also be affected by this. You know, some projections do think that, you know, obviously, like I said, with the auto manufacturing, the steel component of it could be a factor. Also, new home prices, I know, is another thing that people are looking at. But, you know, again, you know, maybe if the home costs what it does, but the interest rates go down, like the actual consumer cost may be unaffected. So, like I said, you know, there's a lot of factors at play here, and we'll see which of them come to fruition and which of them don't.
So, Victoria Churchill, you did a lot of great reporting for us following around the election last year. How do you think this is going to play out politically?
Well, Again, the president promised to bring a lot of manufacturing back stateside, and so if this is a way that if that's a way to make that come stateside, then that's going to be a win for him politically, particularly in swing states. You've got places like Michigan, you've got places like Wisconsin. I believe there's actually an auto manufacturer guy. His name totally escapes me, so I do apologize on that. But the president actually brought him to the White House the other day. This is somebody that was a
that was Kid Rock. See him?
Well, he is producing some things. I don't necessarily know if he's doing that factory labor unless he writes a songwriting factory. But hey, again, if that brings more things back stateside, might as well. But there is actually somebody again whose name does escape me. That this is actually somebody that he had brought this individual up during several of his rallies in Michigan, and this individual, like I said, works in the auto industry, and he was at the White House the other day saying that he believes that this is a win for places like Michigan that have seen, their jobs go overseas. So, again, also, of course, with U.S. manufacturing potentially being brought back, there are things like increased labor costs. So, again, there are going to be additional factors that come into the cost of goods and services. But, at the end of the day, we will see what people are willing to take. And again, there's actually already been some polling. You talk about politically, obviously we talk about polling a lot in the political world. There's some polling that some Americans are willing to kind of, take this and, kind of, I guess, play their part by paying a little bit more, by knowing that its fellow Americans are going to be making these goods if these tariffs do play out in bringing more manufacturing back to the U.S.
Thank you very much, Victoria Churchill. How do we find you online?
Yeah, best way to keep on track of what I'm doing is I've got, my X account. It's going to be snits_churchy, SNITS_CHURCHY. And then as well, I've got a Substack, Freedom Shots. Feel free to subscribe there to hear the latest from me.
There she is, Victoria Churchill. Appreciate your time again. That's going to about do it for the James Show. Remember, we have WeatherCon 2025 brought to you by Blue Ribbon Roofing coming up April 26th. More details on that, go to WBAP.com. But I'd love to see you out there Saturday at the Frontiers of Flight Museum, 9:30 until 1:30 p.m., April 26th. So come on out, say hi. And stick around. Mark Levin's coming up next. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.